Reptiles are amazing, we all love them, that's why you're here. But what if I told you they don't have to be expensive? Today, let's go over the top 5 reptiles for under $50. My name's Adam, this is Diamond, you're watching Wickens Wicked Reptiles, stick around. If you're thinking it's too good to be true to get reptiles under 50 bucks, you're mostly right. But there are some exceptions, and I want to talk about them. Now, a few ground rules. Today, during the video, I'm not going to harp on wild-caught versus captive bred. I've talked too many times about it. I'm not going to bore you. So I'm going to try to make all these reptiles captive bred, and of course, I'm not saying you should buy the cheapest reptile. The good reason to buy a reptile under 50 bucks is because you want to spend all your money on the setup and the husbandry and the care. Don't cheap out when you're buying reptiles. That is not the point of this video. And everything is priced in USD. It can change or fluctuate, but I did check right before making this video and I did find all of these available online for under 50 bucks. Starting off with number 5, this squirmy wormy, it's a bearded dragon. Now I know bearded dragons, everyone has them, they're boring. I'll try to put some interesting stuff on the list. But let's just start with a good reptile for most people. And although I wouldn't say bearded dragons are great reptiles for beginners, they're definitely good for people who put the work in, they know what they're getting themselves into, and they don't mind the fact that, you know, it's gonna be 50 or 60 bucks a year for UVB lights, and maybe another 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 for halogen lights. And you need a bigger space than most people recommend. I recommend a 4x2, something like that, just as a bare minimum. If you're one of those people who don't mind those things, I think you're the right person for the job. And taking care of bearded dragons is a great job. My first reptile ever was a bearded dragon. I'm gonna catch him on the other side. There we go. We do tricks. They can do tricks, like crawl down your back when you don't want them to. And then I got another one. I love them. I've had them for, I don't know, I guess, holy cow, almost 20 years ago now. I got my first dragon. I'm ancient. Now, bearded dragons aren't big. These animals may be 2 feet, Diamond's like 18 inches or something like that, but they like it hot and like it mostly dry. Now, they don't come from deserts in the wild like you'd think, and of course, the setup is gonna be a little bit more expensive, but getting to the nuts and bolts of this, can you get them for under 50 bucks? Yes, all day long. The first one I got was free. The second one I got was free. I bought another one years later for $35, and I see them at expos if you want just a normal one for under 50 bucks all the time. Now, if you're gonna say to me, oh, well, my local PetSmart gouges you. The fact that they charge you $100 for a normal leopard gecko or $120 for a normal ball python, ridiculous. Absolutely, do not buy animals from PetSmart or Petco. At a local reptile shop, they might be more expensive, but keep in mind, your reptile shop has to keep the lights on, they have to pay rent. If you live in a place like New York or Toronto or San Francisco, where rent is $1 million freaking dollars, well, not really that much, but you get the point. It's expensive. But if you get it from a reptile breeder at an expo or online, you can find them all day for between 25 bucks and 50 bucks. And sometimes you can even get a morph for under that price. So just make sure you get it from a reputable breeder. Make sure that it is a good person that you're buying it from, not one of these mills that doesn't treat the animals right. So really finding bearded dragons for a good price is really simple. And so is accomplishing your goals with today's sponsor, Fume. Fume is an award-winning flavored air device. And breaking a bad habit could not be simpler. The Fume device is effective. I love this thing. It looks beautiful if you want this barrel or this one. Either way, it comes with what is basically a fidget spinner on the back. So that hand to mouth fixation, you notice how nothing came out, no vapor, no smoke. It's flavored air in your mouth, that's it. And it's all natural ingredients. I like to liken it to crushing up a mint leaf in your hand and breathing in. No nicotine, no toxins, no smoke, no vapor. Plus, the new cores are absolutely delicious. Cinnamon hearts, spearmint, and black licorice, which even if you don't like black licorice, the actual black licorice that you'd eat, I love the flavor that's inside these cores. Real simple, open up your device, put a new core in, close it, and enjoy your favorite flavor with none of the bad side effects of other things you could be doing. Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and why can't you be the next success story? And right now, for a limited time, use my code Wickens to get a free Fume base when you order the Journey Pack today. It's the all-new magnetic stand for your Fume device. I've got my Fume on my Fume base on my desk all the time. So head to tryfume.com, that's tryfum.com, and use code Wickens or scan the QR code on screen to get your free Fume base when you order your journey pack today. Thanks, Fume, for sponsoring today's episode. Let's get back to the list. Number 4. Let's just ruin the list with an amphibian right away. Back to the old school days of WWR. Pac-Man frog. I almost never talk about Pac-Man frogs. I personally don't keep one. I've had friends who have them and I, babysit them when they go on vacation, or I've cared for a couple here and there, rehabilitated, whatever, but I don't keep them because I think they're kind of boring in terms of frogs. But what's not boring is the way that they look. Pac-Man frogs, first of all, they look really, really cool. You can have green ones and yellow ones and red ones, and you can even buy a whole bunch of different morphs for under that $50 price point. Normal, sometimes you can get them for 10 or 15 bucks. And these are captive bred babies, by the way, not imported. The thing is, with Pac-Man frogs, they don't really move a lot until food is involved. These are insectivores, well, carnivores, because when they get really big, I mean, they're 3 to 5 inches. Sometimes they can get almost a pound in weight. Like, these are big frogs, but they're just gonna sit there, and then they might eat things like really tiny mice, pinky mice, when they get older. But in general, it's gonna be crickets and worms and dubia roaches and probably your fingers if you don't watch out. But they don't have teeth that are really gonna hurt you, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. The good news, I guess, is you don't need a huge enclosure. I'm not saying cramp them into a deli cup, but they're not gonna move all that much. Give them the right substrate. Make sure that you have a water area for them to be in if they want to be. Keep it moist. You can plant the thing if you want. They'll probably bulldoze the plants, but whatever. You can just move them. And they're going to eat, and they're going to poop, and they don't really make too many sounds, and that's basically it. They're really, really, really easy to care for. And if you want a colony of, say, I don't know, dwarf white isopods or some isopods, throw them in there and they'll breed like crazy because these things don't move that much and they'll just eat the poop. You can definitely get them for under 50 bucks, even if you get morphs. And of course there are morphs that are more expensive than the 50 bucks, but I mean, this is kind of a no-brainer all day long. Number 3, crested geckos. Oh boy, I love crested geckos. I know everybody has them. They're boring, blah, 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 but they're not boring. Crested geckos are amazing. I think there's better geckos you could get. I mean, do you want to see a don't get crested geckos, get these 3 geckos instead list? Let me know in the comment section below. Maybe hit the like button while you're down there. Crested geckos come in a bunch of morphs. Don't get me wrong, they can be expensive, especially a couple years ago, the lily white phase where they were crazy expensive and now they're plummeting in price. I think some bald guy on YouTube predicted that about a year ago. Anyway, I digress. The point is, crested geckos, you can buy them for cheap, 25, 35 bucks. I mean, I literally sold crested geckos to a reptile store today for under 50 bucks. So he'll resell them at more than that. But again, they have to keep the lights on and this is Canada. And realistically, his selling price is about 50 bucks American. Anyway, if you go to a reptile expo, I've seen them as cheap as 10 bucks. Now, they're gonna have really high-end nice ones. They're gonna be 100 bucks, 200 bucks or more. I've even seen fully white ones. Well, I've seen one of them that is not for sale and I offered $2,000 and they told me to kick rocks. So there are expensive ones. But the reason that you'd want one is because, first of all, if you want an animal that's cheap and to spend money on the setup, well, crested geckos fit into that. They're easy to care for. Their diet is really easy. They eat literally a powdered diet, so you don't have to worry about, I mean, you should feed them crickets every once in a while. Like I feed mine crickets once a week, but powdered diet is mostly what you're gonna feed them, which is super duper cheap. I'm talking about a few cents per serving. Buy one of the big things, you put powder into a little cup, you mix it up with water, wham bam, Bob's your Uncle Fran's your aunt, you got yourself a crested gecko with a full belly. And that tail of theirs, although it can fall off and doesn't grow back, it doesn't hurt them. So as long as you handle them carefully, the likelihood of that tail falling off is next to none. But if you don't care about the tail, you can actually buy, they're called a frog butt, because I mean, look at it. Look kind of like a butt of a frog, for usually cheaper than their tailed counterparts. So if, I don't know, they have a normal crested gecko for 50 bucks, if it doesn't have a tail, it might be 35 or 40, right? Not always, but that happens a lot of the time. Plus, again, if you're thinking about, I want a really cool enclosure to look at and I want to spend my time and energy and money on the actual enclosure, these are great because they're not big enough they're going to destroy your plants. If you want to plant it with real plants, which I recommend, that's what I do, they're not going to destroy them. They're not big enough unless you use really delicate plants, which I don't recommend you do. And unlike leopard geckos, which also fit on the list, but I'm not going to talk about them in this video, they don't have eyelids. So when you mist them, which is how they drink water droplets. So set them up on a misting system or hand mist them with a mister that you get from the dollar store or whatever, they're gonna lick their eyeballs clean, which is super freaking adorable. They do jump, they are fun, they don't really bite. If they do, it doesn't hurt you, but I've only been bitten by a crested gecko once, and it was my fault. He was clearly telling me to go away, and I wanted to show my friend, and he bit me. Chicken bit me. So you can get a normal, or actually a few lower end morphs, not like that's a real thing, for under 50 bucks all day long. Number 2, dune geckos. I know I'm going gecko back to back here, but the last one won't be a gecko, it'll be a snake actually. Dune geckos are hardly ever talked about. Well, unless you watch Reptiliatus or Daffy's Reptiles or my channel, because we talk about them a lot. There's some people call them elegant geckos or elegant sand figure geckos or sand gecko. There's a bunch of different names. Basically what I'm talking about is Stenodactylus, Stenodactylus petrii. There's a bunch of different species, but all of them are around 2 to 3 inches. They come from North Africa, Middle East, Israel, like that area of the world. And you can actually set them up on sand. Now, if you're new to reptiles, don't go to the reptile store and buy sand for your leopard gecko or your bearded dragon. They don't live on sand in the wild. They shouldn't be set up on just sand. But if you want something that can live on sand, get a dune gecko. These things will live on sand. It'll be no problem. And you can cohabitate them. Oh, play sand, by the way. Go to a hardware store, buy washed play sand. Don't worry about the calcium sand. Don't buy an aggregate. Washed play sand. It's like $5 to $7 a bag, and the bag will last you for freaking ever. Anyway, feed these things small crickets, or when they're babies, I feed them fruit flies, which is easy for me because I have dart frogs, because dart frogs are freaking awesome. I mean, look at these things. But they're not gonna make the list. We've already done a frog. That's enough amphibians for one day. Dune geckos like it hot. They like it dry. So if you have an enclosure, and they don't need to be that big, right? 2 to 3 inch geckos. So you could set them up in a 10-gallon enclosure and cohab them, which by the way, they do really well in cohab situations, even with males together oftentimes, although you're gonna watch a care guide and do your research before you get one or stick them together. But a 10-gallon enclosure is pretty simple. A screen top, a UVB. I mean, they're not gonna be out during the day a lot of the time, but still give them UVB. Sand on the bottom, give them a little tiny water dish, although they probably won't use it. Some hides, that's it. Like, they're so easy, and you can buy them for 10, 15, 20 bucks, sometimes up to 40 bucks. The thing I'll say about dune geckos is, although I don't want to talk about wild-caught animals, oftentimes the dune geckos are wild-caught. That's the thing I don't like about them. That's their only gripe I have with dune geckos, is simply a lot of the times you can't find them captive bred. That is going to change. It is changing, but as of right now, you really can't find them. And when you do, they'll be more expensive. But I'm guessing still under 50 bucks. But I mean, look at these things. They're freaking beautiful. And number 1, ball pythons. Now, I know I've made videos about the most expensive reptiles, and I talked about ball pythons, because guess what? They can be expensive. There are ball python morphs out there that are going to cost tens of thousands of dollars. But a normal ball python, I've said this story a million times. Even before hyperinflation, even after hyperinflation, $5. I bought a $5 ball python in a mix of another deal. I don't know, 2017, before I even had a channel. I bought a $5 ball python earlier this year. So the price is not going up. I mean, people want to get rid of them. To simplify it, there's a bunch of genes in the animals. They put 2 animals together, hoping to make a whole bunch of genes. But sometimes the baby doesn't come out with those genes, right? Mom has blue eyes, dad has brown eyes. You come out with blue eyes, but all your siblings come out with brown eyes. You know what I mean? So sometimes you only get, not saying blue eyes are better than brown eyes. You know what I'm trying to say here. Sometimes you get some normals and they're really not worth anything, and people will just sell them to get rid of them. And some people will sell them off even for feeders, for things like water monitors or cobras or things like that. So if you want a pet, and ball pythons are amazing. I mean, it's a snake that gets 4 or 5 foot, sometimes even smaller for males, because males are smaller than females. This is true in snakes, in my relationship also. And I think that the important thing to remember is, as long as you have an enclosure that's big enough and has hides for them, and enough clutter between those hides, there's no such thing as too big of an enclosure. And I don't recommend, if you're someone who has one pet, to get a tiny little drawer or a tiny little enclosure and stick a ball python in. What's the point? I mean, get a ball python and give it a 4x2x2 paradise, some stuff to climb on and stuff that's all cluttered up together so that it can go behind it and move from place to place. Give it stuff to do, and it's gonna be so fun. I've got ball pythons that I keep in big enclosures, and they use every square inch of that enclosure. I think it's so much fun to watch them explore. Plus, if you want an animal to handle, what better snake than a ball python? If it's for you, if it's for a kid, if it's for a grandma, it doesn't matter. It's big enough that it's not scary and it can't hurt you, but it's impressive to people who don't know snakes. When my friends come over or my family comes over and they don't know snakes, especially the first time, and I show them a ball python, oh my, holy cow, it's so big. Where you and I know, of course, that's not a big snake, it's impressive to other people, and it can't hurt anybody, including a child. They're very unlikely to bite, and the only thing is, they do like it a little bit more humid than some people would like, and sometimes they go off food. But either way, ball pythons, you can buy normals all day for cheap. You can buy pastels. I bought a pastel for $40, and this was before the channel. This is 2017, 2018. I mean, they're really simple to find cheap ball pythons at an expo, at a reptile store, not at PetSmart. It's really, really simple. So in short, it's really easy to find amazing reptiles for under $50, and I just want you to do it for the right reason. Don't cheap out on reptiles. They deserve more than that. If you like videos like this, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. We do videos twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. And as always, a special thanks to the Patreon supporters. You guys get videos early, discounts on merch, that insane enclosure back there. Like, look at this freaking thing. You guys get the video early, all that and more for under $1 a month. And that's it, because I do videos Mondays and Thursdays, which I realize I just said too early. I'll see you in the next one.